Hi, I'm Tim Sill with the Pasadena Fire Department. I'm a fire captain currently assigned to operations at Station 37, assigned to the B shift. I'm part of Leadership Pasadena. I'm currently in the class that's going through right now, and this is our project presentation. We took a look at the needs among police and fire and the community in a way in which we could help them, and we saw that there's a growing need in dealing with people with IDD, developmentally disabled individuals, and how can we as a community, how can we as a fire department and a police department better serve them. So this is what we came up with. Today's the presentation of that, and we have an amazing speaker who we're excited to learn from, as well as the fire department has Leadership Pasadena, in working with the fire department, has developed a kind of a little twist to an existing program, the Vial of Life. The Vial of Life is a nationwide program in which you take what looks like a medicine bottle, but you put your pertinent information in there, and it's stored in a freezer. And then when you put a sticker on your refrigerator that lets first responders know that this information is in the freezer. And so that's an existing program that's been going on. It's called the Vial of Life for many years. This year, and for this program, we made a slight change. And if you have somebody that's in your home that is dealing with, who is a person with IDD, there's additional questions and things on there to help us, how would you say this? There's additional information that's on this sheet so that us as first responders can better suit the needs of that person. It has information on there such as if a person has a trigger, if they have sensitivity to light, if they have sensitivity to sound, if they prefer to speak to a male or a female, if they're non-communicative at all. And these things help us first responders in there, in addition to their history, allergies, medications, so that we can make a successful call and meet that person's needs.
Hello, my name is Brian Herritt. I'm also known as Autism Cop. I'm a retired police officer from down in the San Diego area, and I was contacted by Leadership Pasadena to come out and provide some training and provide a presentation for the local special needs community, families and caregivers, to try to help bridge that gap between law enforcement and the special needs community. I have a 14-year-old son who has severe autism and who's nonverbal. And that's kind of my experience mixed with being a police officer and understanding that there's a real lack of training there for police officers, and as well as there's some gaps and some walls that get put up between special needs families and local public safety agencies. So it's my hope today, with a lot of great support from Leadership Pasadena and from Pasadena Police, South Pasadena Police, and the Pasadena Fire Department, that we can put some of these families in contact with their local first responders and make them feel comfortable. So in the event of an incident or an emergency, that disclosure is already made.
Good evening. My name is Cy Estabrook. I'm a lifelong Pasadena resident. I am currently serving on the Pasadena's Accessibility and Disability Commission, and I've just started my term, so I've been getting well acquainted with many of the different activities and the people involved in our great city. And it's been a very, very illuminating process, and I'm very excited to be a part of it.
Hi, my name is Patty Trollio, and I am the Director of Client Success for Inspire Us organization, which is a global reward and recognition and industry leader in leadership development. As for Leadership Pasadena, I am in the current class of 2017, and in addition to being a current class member, I am also involved as a chair for recruitment, and also will be serving as the Vice President of Recruitment for the class of 2018 and beyond. This is a program that I feel very deeply about. I feel very energetic about the needs of the special needs community. As you know, in the news there have been many incidences of unsafe encounters, and when our partner Via Esperanza approached Leadership Pasadena about an event that they wanted to do and they just didn't have the resources for, it was more than enough interest from our class to be able to participate and partner with them. So we're delighted to be able to bring this, sponsored with the help of many organizations. Our community partners include Ability First, Via Esperanza, and PCDA. In addition to that, you'll see we have a great presence with the captain, the fire department, chiefs of the fire and police department, and many other organizations. So we believe that communities need to be informed, need to have a lot of information about safe encounters, and also to be able to help each other. So this is an opportunity to bring this educational format to Pasadena for the first time, and we hope that it will be a continuing process with our trainer today, Brian Herritt, who is a professional, not only a retired police officer, but he also is the father of an autistic son, so he knows both sides of the camp. So we hope that this is something that we can bring to the community and they can continue on for many, many other occasions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kelly White. I'm the CEO for Villa Esperanza Services. We are a nonprofit here located in Pasadena. We serve over 600 individuals, children, adults, and seniors with developmental disabilities, both in probably about 49 cities. And one of our missions, actually our mission is to enrich their lives, make them more independent as possible, find them employment, find them housing, find them whatever best suits their needs. And so we're really excited to be part of this Leadership Pasadena and sponsoring this. And it's all about collaboration, because that's what we need to do. We're an educational resource for a lot of families that are out there that are needing more support as far as community integration. And so just happy to be part of this. So thank you.
Okay, my name is Aaron Kitzman. I'm the Vice President of Adult Programs at Villa Esperanza Services. And tonight we're here at this beautiful auditorium to talk to families and first responders and people with disabilities, and hopefully allow them to communicate better so that if there's ever a crisis, there can be a more positive outcome. I've had a lot of luck with this out in Ventura County. We've provided similar trainings with the same trainer. His name is Brian Herritt, and it's worked out really well. Families have given us a lot of positive feedback, and we've started hearing that there was a need for this in Pasadena. So with the help of Leadership Pasadena, we've brought this training out tonight, and hopefully it'll be a huge success.
Hello, good evening. My name is Art Miller. I'm the Chief of Police with the South Pasadena Police Department, and I'm so glad to be here tonight to talk about how law enforcement fits into the component of people with special needs, mental illness, and other issues. And I'm also glad that we are able to bridge the gap between what's known and what's unknown, and how we as a law enforcement community can help the community at large.
We're here this evening to celebrate, first of all, the Leadership Pasadena class of 2017. As a former graduate, or as a graduate of Leadership Pasadena 2016, I'm really just thankful and blessed to be here to celebrate this evening. But as Leadership Pasadena does things, we're also celebrating something extra special, and that's what's going to make a difference in the lives of so many people that live in and around the city of Pasadena, and that is an enhanced Vials of Life program. Again, we're here this evening, and in addition to celebrating the graduation of Leadership Pasadena class, we're here to also impact the lives of people along the IDD spectrum. As first responders, be it law enforcement or from fire or EMS, oftentimes we go into a situation where there's so much more that we can know and learn, or information that we can have to make a huge difference in the lives of those that we're serving. This program here is going to give us that information. It's going to be a tool that we can use where we'll be able to greatly amplify the services that we give each and every day. So I'm very excited to be here. I'm very honored to be here, and I'm very happy for all the partnerships that are participating. You know, we all know, or we've heard, that it takes a village to raise a community. This is definitely a village that's This is definitely a village that's coming together to enhance the lives of everyone here in the city of Pasadena.
So good evening, I'm Pasadena Police Chief Philip Sanchez, and I want to welcome you on behalf of the Pasadena Police Department to Pasadena Leadership, where we'll be talking about mental health tonight. We have a variety of speakers who will explore and discuss this very complex and wicked problem. The truth of the matter is that we are not going to enforce our way out of mental health issues. We really have to look at a collaborative effort to bring about a multidisciplinary approach to issuing or to solving these issues. Everywhere from proactive assessment to appropriate clinician investment and investigation to first responders. We'll have to figure this out together.
All right, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for coming to this, what I think is a very important event. My name is Aaron Kitzman. I'm the Vice President of Adult Programs at Villa Esperanza Services, and I'm very proud to say that Villa is the primary partner for tonight's event with Leadership Pasadena. Before we really get started, I was asked to discuss just some housekeeping items. So if you need to use the restroom, they're out the door and down the stairs, and there is water available outside if you need it. Also, if for any reason anyone needs a quiet space, if it gets a little too much for somebody, there is some space downstairs with some chairs that you can go down and just get away for a moment if you need to. Lastly, if anybody needs it, there is Spanish translation available. So if you need that, you can just go to the back of the room and there's a headset that you can pick up. So, okay. So with that being said, we want to get started. I was asked to give you just a brief history of how tonight sort of came together. And what happened was several months ago, Leadership Pasadena contacted Villa Esperanza and asked if there was a way that they could support people with disabilities. Villa, as you know, has been supporting children, adults, and seniors with disabilities since 1961. We think we're pretty darn good at what we do, and we were really excited that they would reach out to us for this. So apparently, I'm told that Leadership Pasadena was told that there was someone at Villa that, through their work with the Autism Society in Ventura County, had been hearing that there was a need to improve communication and understanding between people with disabilities and first responders. So in an attempt to address that, the person coordinated several trainings, specifically for first responders, families, care providers, so that they could come together and talk and learn how to best work with one another and to hopefully achieve a more positive outcome should there be a crisis, and better yet, hopefully to even prevent the crisis before it took place. Leadership was told how much families enjoyed the training, how great the trainer was. We'll introduce you to Brian Herritt here in a few moments, and how much people really got out of it. And in fact, we're asking for more training following it. If you haven't guessed by now, that someone was me. And so, no, thank you. And so, because this is how the world works, I got called into a couple of meetings and gave Leadership Pasadena just a couple of quick ideas, and they really took that and ran with it, put in a lot of time and energy, and the results are what you're going to see tonight. So, first and foremost, I want to thank Leadership Pasadena. I'm going to call out the folks who really took this on. And I'd like to ask them to stand. They don't know I'm going to do that, but I'm going to ask them to stand so at the end we can give them a quick round of applause. So, Captain Tim Sell with the fire department. Where are you, Cap? Oh, he's in the very back there. Patty Triglio. Veronica Francis. Is she here? They're in the back. Oh, okay. Well, Veronica, thank you. Michelle Bailey, outside also, okay. And Cindy Bankson. We also want to thank again Villa Esperanza Services, and Kelly White is here. She's our CEO, as well as Jay Henneberry, our board chair. Ability First played a large role in this. Also, Lori and Chris Otera. I don't know if they're here tonight. There she is. There she is. Professional Child Development Associates, or better known as PCDA, and Dr. Diane is right here on the front. Thank you. The Pasadena Fire Department, again, Captain Sell, but also Chief Washington, who we'll be hearing from briefly here in the front. Chief, thank you. The Pasadena Police Department has sent a couple of representatives, so Lieutenant Goodman, I think I see him in the back. There we go. And also Chief Sanchez. Also there's Chief. South Pasadena Police Department, Chief Miller, also up here in the front. We do want to thank PUSD. They did send the Spanish translators if it was needed, so thank you so much for doing that, especially in the evening. And then finally, the volunteers from Pasadena City Ambassador Program who helped direct folks in as they were entering the auditorium. Just a quick note, it's really incredible that the City of Pasadena South Pass has sent the brass from the departments. It's really difficult to get all of them to show up, so I really think it's important that we acknowledge that they take the time to come out for this really important training, so thank you, Chief. Also, we need to thank folks who made donations to make tonight possible. Nothing's for free, and without these donations, we couldn't be here tonight. So first, Pastor Gabe and Monica Ahn of the H-Rock Church for giving this incredible auditorium for us tonight, so thank you. The Pasadena Firefighters Union, Local 809, and the Pasadena Police Officers Union for underwriting all the expenses for the event. Thank you. And then Brian Herritt, who again you're going to hear more about later, but somehow leadership got Brian to waive his speaker fee, and that's just incredible, so thank you. Okay, so before we get started and I can get off the stage, I do want to introduce you to Chief Patrol Washington from the Pasadena Fire Department. He's going to talk about this incredible idea. I haven't heard of this before, but it's called the Vial of Life, and I think it'd be a really, really helpful clue or a hint for ways that you can help prepare for an emergency. So Chief, it's all yours.
Leadership Pasadena was an unforgettable journey, and I only wish that everyone had an opportunity to go through it. So for Pasadena firefighters, from early on, once we hire them and we begin training them, our training staff gives them a host of education, information, and hands-on skills training, how to carry themselves and operate amongst a variety or diverse group of people. But for specific types of emergencies, especially the ones that we're seeing more frequently now in the news, locally, and across the country, there's new challenges and a growing number of incidents that occur. So thanks to Leadership Pasadena and a joint effort of the first responders that you already heard about, we have a new program that is being unveiled this evening. I can tell you that besides the new and improved training that our firefighters receive, they'll also have access to this program that I'm going to share with you all. And guess what? I have a sample of it. It's right here. So this is a program actually that's been used by Pasadena firefighters for several years. However, now we're going to, and actually specifically what that program is called the Vial of Life. And so this is a vial of life, again, that's been used by the Pasadena firefighters. However, this program is being enhanced by this partnership. And so whereas the program typically has a form on the inside of it with information about a particular patient that lives in the home, such as medications, allergies to medications, medical history, it's now going to include additional information in it. And so the purpose of it is so that whether a firefighter or a police officer arrives at the home and they see a special magnet that would have the logo affixed to the refrigerator or the freezer, then that would alert them that there's more information available. So what we're doing now is inside this vial, the firefighters or the police officers can locate a form. I'm going to open this up and hope that a snake doesn't pop out. So the first responder can locate a form. And in addition to the medications and the history and all of those types of things, it can have information about any needs that a patient may have that's amongst the IDD spectrum. So this would help us to ensure that there's successful outcomes on these types of incidents. Everyone here tonight will have an opportunity to receive this vial. And they'll also have an opportunity to take out the form, fill out the form, and place it back in the vial and place it inside of their freezer. And then, of course, they can affix the magnet to their refrigerator or freezer. Again, this is something that you can do this evening. So also, in addition to getting the vial this evening, so whether it's with your family or with your friends or just neighbors or whomever that you might know, you'll also have an opportunity to receive these vials at our Fire Service Day on May 13th, or any of our open houses or other programs that the fire department hosts. So we invite you to come meet your first responders before you even have to think about calling 911. We invite you to get more information about the programs that we have. And again, I just want to thank you all for being here tonight and allowing Pasadena Fire Department to be a part of this. So next, I'd like to introduce you to my colleague in Public Safety, South Pasadena Police Chief, Art Miller.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Art Miller from the South Pasadena Police Department. I'm so very happy to be here tonight. Let me tell you a story, a quick cop story. About 3 years ago, officers responded to a call of a teenager who had a rifle at a school. It was on a weekend. And when the officer arrived, he recognized the gun as an airsoft gun, because his own son had an airsoft gun. But the young man was in crisis mode, and he had special needs, and had called the police on himself so that it would be a suicide by cop. Luckily, through training and the fact that our officer recognized that weapon that looked very real, it was the crisis averted. And that's just an example of some of the training that is provided to our officers so that they go out into the field. And as you can imagine, we see everything that society has to offer, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The way good police work is delivered is by well-equipped, well-educated, and officers that are ready to go out and serve. I want to describe to you some of the training that we do at South Pasadena Police Department, but the same training is overlapped throughout the Southern California area. We have the basic training in the academy that, for dealing with people with special needs. And dealing is kind of a harsh word. I haven't really found another word that might replace that. Working with, addressing, I don't know what the right word is, but let me just tell you from my bottom of my heart, I mean it with a total respect when I say we deal with people, because people give us stuff and we have to deal with it. We have to problem solve it, we have to move forward with it, we have to resolve it safely for the officer and then the person that we're called upon to provide service for. After an officer graduates from the academy, there is in-service training throughout his or her career. Some of it is mandated by POST, which is the Police Officer Standards and Training, which we are governed by. Some of it is voluntary that our officers go to. They seek out the education themselves. And then some of it is things that I come up with. And I know that about 3.5 years ago with Dr. Diane, there was a member of her staff who I personally knew, and she asked about doing a tour at our police station. And of course, I opened our doors to the PCDA. And what I got from that was a willingness of the community to reach out to us to offer a service that we didn't know about. But at the same time, we received training from her staff. And then later on, we had a continual thing for maybe 3 or 4 visits where we provided training back and kind of put staff members in our shoes to kind of see how we have to operate. That's been a very positive experience for us. More recently, there are 4 cities in the San Gabriel Valley Irwindale, Monrovia, Arcadia, and the South Pasadena Police Department that are involved in a mental evaluation response team. And what we do is we assign a detective with a healthcare professional, mental health care professional, and they travel around to 4 cities and they will handle or take the call away from a patrol officer when there are aggravated circumstances with someone with special needs or someone that may be mentally ill. This is something that is not new, but it's new to us in the area. The sheriffs have a larger component of this. LAPD has a larger component of it. And when you compare 36 officers to 9,800 officers, we really have to share the wealth a little bit with the responsibility of making sure that our public gets served properly. Prior to coming to South Pasadena, I had the good fortune of being a lieutenant at one time with the LAPD. One of my assignments was I was in charge of the mental evaluation unit and also the SMART team. And so I have a passion for this area of law enforcement. And again, not to say that we didn't have it at South Pasadena before, but when you have someone that has seen it and has sent clinicians out with officers, it does make it a little easier sell for officers in our area now. So with that, I know this is kind of it really doesn't necessarily cross over, but I think in some areas it does. I've assigned a sergeant to be a homeless advocate or homeless advocate. So anytime there's a homeless issue in the city of South Pasadena, that sergeant will go in and get all the information that he can, and then problem solve that through the community. And again, we're a very small department, but we try to do as much as we can to help serve the public. And I think my belief is that if law enforcement and the community can get together at the early stages, then it'll solve problems. The problems won't exist later on as big as they could be. But let me just give you more or less a laundry list, if you will, of some of the training that every officer and almost every staff member of the police department has gone through. We went through a class that was provided by the District Attorney's Office on mental health awareness and crisis intervention tactics for first responders. We have learned about depressive disorder, anxiety disorders, post-traumatic stress disorders, autism, abused and neglected children, bipolar disorders, substance abuses, agitated, excited delirium, sexual assault victims, the elderly, dealing with the elderly that have certain issues, suicidal individuals and dangers involved with working with them, reactions to crisis and trauma, the psychological response, common crisis signs and symptoms, crisis plans and assessments, dangers involved in crisis intervention, accident survivors, greeting family members, helping distressed children with communication, and reassurance and follow-up. So when you see black and white driving around the area, regardless of what city you come from, know that the vast majority of officers you see, whether it's officers or deputies, they have received similar training, in some cases more, in some cases less. But you should rest assured that we do everything we can to provide a service to our public so that everyone gets to go home safely. And I just want to get that out so you can have maybe a little glimpse into what we do. I would encourage you if you're ever in South Pasadena, stop by the police station, go to the front counter, tell them that you want to do a tour of the station, tell them that you want to introduce your family member if you would like. We will, and if you're willing, we'll enter that information that's vital in case there's ever a missing person situation where we can look that person up. And then everyone at my station knows this, that if you go to the station and you ask for that, they should do it, and if they don't, they'll come and ask me, and then I'll approve it. So it's again, opening our doors so you can see what we do from the other side of the black and white, if you will. So, with that, thank you very much for allowing me to share some of the things that we do. I'd like to introduce my my good friend, Phil Sanchez. He's the police chief with the city of Pasadena. And I'm sure he never gets confused with Pasadena. I always get accused of being the chief of Pasadena. I always have to correct people on that. I tell folks that we make North Pasadena possible. Anyway, Phil has a long and varied career. He's experienced in many, many aspects of law enforcement, community service, and everything having to do with public service. He's a 35-year veteran of law enforcement. He's been your chief almost said it, in Pasadena for 7 years. He has a passion for this subject, and I'm very, very happy to introduce Phil Sanchez.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here on behalf of the Pasadena Police Department. Art and I go back a long way. We're actually twins. We were just separated at birth, so it worked out pretty well. But I think Art and Chief Washington covered the training part quite well. In the city of Pasadena, like many of the other jurisdictions in Los Angeles County, we have that arrangement with a police officer and a mental health clinician. In Pasadena, we call that the HOPE team, for the Homeless Outreach Psychiatric Evaluation Team, or HOPE, as most people know them. You'll be hearing from one of our primary clinicians and our primary officers in just a moment, Officer Domino Scott Jackson, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her in just a few moments. That kind of response capacity is extraordinarily important for our organization. Through our analytics, we've discovered that our officers deal with psychiatric issues about 25% of the time. So there are a lot of calls for service that Domino and her colleagues or first responders, uniformed first responders, are involved with. And that has necessitated a lot of training, much of which Chief Miller outlined in just a moment. But with the remaining time that I have, I'm going to make an argument that our service model needs to be changed. The paradigm needs to shift, in part because when there's an emergency, whether it's developmental issues that we're dealing with, or a mental health episode that a person's dealing with, police officers are called at the moment of crisis. That's the wrong time to deal with the mental health issue. Officers are trying to order or command or direct the subject to do one thing, and because the person might be suffering from mental health issues, or an auditory processing issue, or a synapses and a neuroprogramming issue, whatever the issue might be, that's the wrong time for an officer to try to be directing a person to do something, a command, or to surrender a weapon, or any of those other kinds of things. I'm going to suggest for a moment that mental health issues need to be dealt with long in advance of the officer. In fact, are we so surprised that more often than not, nationally, officers are involved in extraordinary uses of force that become these national issues in dialogue, in part because force was used to try to resolve a mental health issue. Is that really the best model? I suggest for a moment it is not. It is a matter of necessity that officers are called, not as a matter of desired outcome. So if we're going to really address mental health going forward, I think we need to start looking at a different model about how that might look like. The county has had PET teams, psychiatric response emergency teams, for some time now. Typically the PET team, though, is overwhelmed and overconsumed with calls. And if you know anything about mental health episodes, and many of you do, you're subject matter experts, the truth is that an officer will go to a scene, or a clinician will go to a scene, they'll be able to de-escalate to get the person to some mental health assessment area, but then it takes an extraordinary amount of time. The officer's tied up for several hours. So I don't know that that's the best service model. One part of the service model we have to look at, however, are the availability of psychiatric beds in the county. If my officers are dealing with 25% of their calls for mental health, and Chief Miller is doing the same, or Chief Washington's paramedics are tied up on those kinds of calls, it takes the officer away from other kinds of calls. And moreover, what do we do when the person's actually in our custody? Typically the scenario is the officer then transports to a local area hospital, the subject goes under some mental health assessment, he or she is put on a 72-hour hold, and then what happens? For 72 hours, either that person is detained under a mental health evaluation process, or in some cases, as I've seen, they're issued medication and simply ushered out the back door. that's problematic for us, because typically that person will then be re-engaged in that mental health episode, which makes it difficult for my first responders. So I hope these kinds of dialogues and kind of workshop bring about our nonprofit colleagues and help encourage them to think of a different service model. I know that's something that Chief Miller and I and others in law enforcement are looking at consistency. What's the best way to deal with mental health? And I'm suggesting it's not oftentimes the police officer who is at the front of the incident trying to mitigate it. Mental health reaches the families in so many different ways. I can appreciate what Chief Washington was talking about, the bottle of life and all that good stuff, but my experience has been most families don't want to share that information. So we're going to have to figure out some way that we're going to have to declassify mental health as this black eye of society. We're going to have to figure out how we're going to be able to get resources to the families that need resources without repercussions or classification of individuals. Or this person is that, or this person is this. And then we have all the social ills and all the erosion of status in our society that are associated with that. If we're going to do anything with mental health, in my opinion, we have to change the service model, and we have to change the way we look at mental health. And if we're going to change the way we need to look at mental health, that's going to take lobbying the legislators in Sacramento or at the federal level so we can change the laws and we can change classifications so we can look at mental health in a more holistic fashion. Sending a police officer is not going to work. It's only going to make the problem more problematic, at least in my opinion. A person that can probably speak to that more eloquently than I is your next speaker. She is Domino Scott Jackson from the Pasadena Police Department. She is one of our senior HOPE officers and deals with a lot of issues. From the person wanting to jump off the bridge to the person who was armed with a butcher knife just a few days ago, and Domino was part of that effort to surrendering without the use of force, which I was very thankful for. Domino holds a bachelor's degree in sociology. She holds her master's degree in clinical psychology with a specialization in marriage and family therapy. Much like her colleagues at the Pasadena Police Department, she has a lot of training in this area, which is beneficial towards de-escalating these kinds of very problematic and very complex issues. And so as you continue to listen to the speakers this afternoon and we get to our main speaker, please consider how we might change our service model going forward. Once again, I would echo or I would underscore the fact that I don't believe it is one of the few service models we have now, options we have, but I don't believe that a police officer is often well equipped, despite the extraordinary training that Chief Miller outlined for his officers and similarly for my officers. I don't believe it's the best service model possible given the dynamics of the interaction between the person suffering from mental health and the officer trying to de-escalate or trying to mitigate the issues. Thank you.
I want to say thank you for coming out this evening for this very well-organized training seminar. So as Chief Sanchez mentioned, I'm a member of the Homeless Outreach Psychiatric Evaluation Team, and I've been with the team for 4 years now. The team has been in existence since 2002. Initially, when the team started, it was to address mental health issues as well as homeless issues in the city of Pasadena. Currently, the unit is comprised of 3 co-response teams, which is a police officer and a full-time clinician who's employed with the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health. Our primary responsibilities include co-responding to mental health crisis calls, homeless outreach, and most recently we've taken on the task of doing case management. In the last 4 years, we've realized that if we can intervene prior to getting that service call for somebody who's in crisis, that if we have that information, that we hopefully can prevent a crisis from actually occurring. So part of our case management includes going out to talk to the families, going out and interacting with the individual that is in crisis, and then after, if we find that we have to hospitalize that person, then what we do at that point is that's when our case management will start, and we start following up with them, ensuring that they're at least on track with their therapy sessions, make sure they're on track with taking their medications as prescribed, making sure even if they need a ride to the clinic, we actually are in a position where we can facilitate that process. So we're proud, as I'm speaking on behalf of the other teams, we're proud to say that the case management piece for us has been working out really well, and we've had some pretty successful cases within the last couple of months. So it was mentioned a little bit earlier, but each team has been specially trained in crisis intervention as well as crisis negotiations. So we've been through well over 80 hours of training that involves crisis intervention. The type of the training that we respond to, or that we receive, really dissects signs and symptoms of individuals that are in crisis. That might be a person who is experiencing a schizophrenic episode, or somebody who might be bipolar. Or we may even look at some of the things that we should be doing if we're going to respond to a call regarding a person who is autistic or living with autism. A lot of our training also speaks to de-escalation. So the goal for us, not just for the co-response teams, but for the law enforcement community, is to reduce uses of force that involve a person that's mentally ill or is in some type of crisis. And most importantly, the goal after we've de-escalated a person or an individual or a scene, we want to get them to the right resource. By having the Department of Mental Health on board with us gives us that opportunity to make sure that we're getting the people that we encounter to the correct services, and ensuring that they're not going to the hospital if they don't need to go to the hospital. Make sure that we're working with the family to ensure that they're going to get the best appropriate services. We're also trained, again, to assess and develop an immediate intervention that promotes a safety plan and continuity of care. We also provide training for our department personnel, including police officers, jailers, dispatchers, just so that they can have an understanding of what it is that we need also as co-responders. So we provide that training for them. It is with great pleasure that I am now able to tell you a little bit about our presenter for this evening. Brian Herritt, also known as the Autism Cop, is a retired police officer from San Diego County. He is the proud father of 3 children, with his middle son, who is living with severe autism and is nonverbal. Brian's journey began when his son wandered away, only to find out that his son had encountered the police. At that time, Brian realized the lack of special needs training for first responders. In 2007, Brian received a grant to provide training for public safety agencies throughout San Diego County. Brian serves as a subject matter expert for the California Peace Officer Standard Training in the development of his training curriculum. In 2009, Officer Herritt expressed his vision and developed a countywide special needs database. That vision has now become the San Diego Sheriff's Department Take Me Home program. This program is one of the most expansive and detailed special needs databases in the nation. Brian has provided countless hours of training for the law enforcement community, dispatchers, school resource officers, hostage negotiators, probation department, corrections, theme parks, school districts, churches, families, and caregivers. With Brian's personal experience, he is well versed in this subject matter and is living his vision, which is to serve as a resource for anyone willing to listen. I've had the great pleasure of training with Brian, and I can say that he is truly passionate about what he does. Let's give a warm welcome for Brian Herritt.
All of those great things that Domino said, are true, but for me to you guys today, I'm little Brian's dad. Yes, I was a police officer. I medically retired, probably largely because I was working 2 full-time jobs because my wife's career was put on hold when my son was diagnosed with autism at 2 years old. A lot of you know that struggle and know that life, or whether you yourselves are parents or you're here as a caregiver or somebody that works with special needs children or adults, you know that kind of challenge. And that's what I bring with you today. Can we go through the slides? I'm sorry, my PowerPoint didn't work on my laptop. Keep going. Keep going. And I hate using microphones too. There's me and little Brian. You can go one more. Can I get one more slide? There we go. I have my own website, which is autismcop.com. That there are resources and stuff on there. There's my email and there's my phone number. In every class I teach, whether it's to cops or it's to caregivers and families, I open up my email and my phone number to be whatever type of resource I can. One of the reasons my wife, who's really my hero, and I mean that, and I'll talk about her in a second, one of the reasons we've agreed to do that was that wasn't there for us 12 years ago. It just wasn't. We didn't have a resource to go to. And me being a cop, and I'll get into this a little bit too, I didn't want to talk about it. I was the parent that was in denial. I was the parent that didn't see anything wrong. That was me. As a cop, everything with me is supposed to be perfect and I'm supposed to have every answer. But when I went home and my child was 2, little Brian would look at me and laugh when he did something wrong at 2, and I couldn't grasp that. So because of the fact that that wasn't there for us, I want to be there for you the best way that I can. Now, I'm also there, and I put that up in my law enforcement classes, and I get calls from cops all over the place, and I'm always willing to help them any way I can. If I don't know, I'm honest with you and tell you I don't know. You can go to the next slide, please. But if you do go, it's funny because there's my website. I'm also on Facebook, and I am on LinkedIn. If you want to go there and like those pages, please do. Next slide, please. A big part of my class has to do with the form. And I didn't know about this when I got here. So we're going to include that and as part of it, because this group has done a great service to you guys by providing that for you. But there's a picture of my family. And this is the reason I'm here. And I'm going to talk to them. The same way, if you come to me afterward and you start talking to me about your loved one or who you take care of or who you deal with special needs, I generally ask you to tell me something positive about them. And the reason for that is we're so easily focused on the negative. And there's positives with all of our loved ones with special needs, or everybody that we deal with. But I'll tell you, in the back there is my wife. I tell you, she's my hero. She gave up her career. Brian is homeschooled. He's been homeschooled for the last 2 years. She also takes care of my other 2 kids and me. I think I require more work than Brian, little Brian sometimes. If you asked her, she would probably agree. Next to my wife is my son, Vinny. He's 17 years old. I tell people he's the best big brother a kid with autism can have. Vinny is a theater kid. He does get embarrassed by the way his brother reacts in public on occasion. But I've also seen Vinny take his brother during a seizure, put him in a recovery position, and when I walked in the room, tell me, Dad, he's been seizing for about 45 seconds. Okay? The little one on the bottom, I call her my terrorist, because I believe that to be true. That's my daughter Isabella, and then there's me, and then there's Brian behind me. Now, Brian is 14 years old. He's nonverbal. He's one of the smartest kids I've ever had the pleasure of meeting, although I can very rarely hear him talk to me in words. Okay? He's a con artist. He is. He's a playboy. He likes girls. Definitely likes girls. And he's also a master manipulator. Those are his good qualities. Anyway, a story about this picture, just to kind of get us started. My wife came to me, and that picture's about a year old. She came to me a year ago and said, I want a family picture. I laughed, and I said, that's a waste of money. Brian will never sit still for a family picture. So my wife says, I don't care, I want to try. So we do. We go into the photographer, we're sitting there, and the goal was for us to be in a diamond minus Brian, and there was room in between Vinny and my wife up there where Brian was going to go, because we're going to get in position, and my wife, who always talks to Brian, who deals with Brian every day, would call Brian. Brian would come up and we would take the picture. So we're all in position, and my wife starts calling Brian, and he's covering his eyes, and he's kind of smiling. And I look at him and I say, "Hey, Bubba, come here. I want to take a picture." And where does he go? He goes right behind me. So that picture is in my hallway, and every time my wife tells me Brian loves her more, I tell her, "Go look at the family picture." Because he came to me. Can I get the next slide, please? So what you're going to hear today is we're going to talk about bridging the gap with first responders. And there's been a lot of talk today. You've heard the chiefs talk. You've heard Domino talk. They're going to do their part, and they do. But there's a part we have to do as families and as people that work in the industry. There's a part for us that we have to do. And I want to talk about bridging that gap. I'm going to talk to you about safety risks in your home, safety risks in your community, and safety risks in the schools. Next slide, please. Anybody ever seen this picture? A lot of you have, some of you haven't. In this particular photograph, the young man sitting there, for most of you from the special needs community, you look and you say, "Brian, that looks like to me a kid probably with a developmental disability." That's what you see. A law enforcement officer was called to the scene because somebody, it wasn't the law enforcement officer, called and said the item that that young man who's sitting up is holding in his hand was a gun. When the police officers responding to the call of a person sitting in the roadway with a gun, they reacted initially the way we're all trained to react as cops. You look at it and see a developmentally disabled adult. Cops look at it and see a person with a gun in crisis. I may not go home to my kids at night. Now, in this particular case, there were some issues, and there's actually been charges brought against an officer because of it. But what I want to show you is the stark difference in the way we look at things and why I'm here. Okay, next slide, please. There are others. I've gotten nonstop emails and conversations about the case in Florida with a 10-year-old boy getting handcuffed and walked out of the school. A lot of you probably have heard that. The one thing I know that maybe the chiefs don't know to the degree that you do is the special needs community is tight, and we talk about everything. We have social media, we're on the phone, we go to meetings. I'm not nervous in this room full of cops, but you put me in here with a bunch of autism moms and dads, I'm a little afraid. To be honest with you. Okay? But we do talk. There are other cases. SWAT standoff unfolds in San Marcos Mobile Home Park after man tries to kill mom's turtle. Kid with autism. I was actually involved in that. San Francisco PD uses non-lethal force to end standoff with autistic teen. I know all about that case because I was brought into it. Okay? These things are happening. They know, the police officers know they're happening. They're doing what they can by getting training. But are we doing as families our part to meet them? And I question that with all of you. Next slide, please. So what is the first thing a first responder attempts to gain when he or she, sorry Domino, first responds to a location or a scene? The first thing that a cop looks for is, next slide please, control. Now let me ask you a question, because I know I'm guilty of it, probably twice this month. For those of you that are in the care of people with special needs or have children with special needs, have you at all in the last month lost control? Can I see a show of hands? Just about all of your hands should be up, because I know that. So here's my part of my dilemma in saying we need to bridge the gap, and kind of what Chief was talking about up there. If you can't control your loved one or take control of the scene involving your loved one with autism or with a developmental disability or with mental illness, whatever it is, how can we expect them, when they have no prior knowledge, to walk into your living room and do that? But that's the expectation. And here's the kicker. Every officer in South Pasadena, every officer in Pasadena will do that right now if they had to, knowing that they're going up against the odds. The fire department shows up at house fires and medical calls and has no training, nothing but when you call 911, they don't call you back and say, sorry, we're not coming. That's the truth. The first thing they look for to maintain is control. You're not going to be a police officer for very long if you can't get control. The other thing is things for cops move very, very quick. Same thing for firefighters. They move very, very fast. We learn the more you're into dealing with people in crisis or meltdowns or whatever you want to call it, that patience is the key. But how long did it take you to learn that? And then you take a cop off the street coming into a foreign environment where there's somebody being violent and they're supposed to achieve that. Next slide, please. And this is how you can help when I say you do your part. The number one thing you can do, and the number one thing I want all of you to do as soon as reasonably possible, and if that's tomorrow, do it tomorrow, is I want you to find two places. I want you to find wherever your local police department is. If it's Pasadena, then go to the Pasadena police station. Actually, if you live in Pasadena, you're going to go to Domino tonight, because she ain't leaving. If it's South Pasadena, like Chief said, walk into their lobby. You find that local police department, you walk in, and I want you to bring your loved one. And I don't care if they have autism, if they have a meltdown. You know what? If they have a meltdown with you in the lobby, to be honest with you, if it can be controlled, great. And I'll tell you why. Because you're telling them, I need you to know who my loved one is. I need you to know that. You walk in to the police station, South Pasadena tomorrow, walk in and say, hey, I went to a training last night. Chief was there. Chief told me, come in today. I want you guys to record my address, my son or my daughter or my loved one's name, and I want you to put it in your CAD system or whatever system they have, and I know they both have CAD systems. What a CAD system is that's your premise history. If they ever get called to your house, it will come up that that person lives there. And if you haven't done that, you haven't done your part yet. And we're just at the police department. I want you to bring them with you. I'm going to tell you right now, you walk into the police station with one of your loved ones, somebody with a developmental disability, a physical disability, and you walk in and you say, hey, I just want an officer to meet my son and I want to give you guys our information so you can put it in your computer system. Here's the secret. Cops love to interact with kids. They love to protect our special populations. They do. They take a great deal of pride in it. The problem is, not only are you guys or us as family members not reaching out to them, but they kind of feel uncomfortable reaching out to us. And I get it. Think about it. Think about, do you think a person walking up to you is worried about offending you? I know a lot of good cops that I see. I go out with Brian, I'm not in my uniform, and I'll see cops that look from a distance and they smile. You guys all know the looks. They smile from a distance, they wave from a distance, but they don't want to get too close. They don't understand our world. Likewise, you don't understand their world. So we need to bridge that gap. Okay? We need to bridge that gap. So you need to walk into the police station, and if you're not in Pasadena, whatever city you're in, walk in. I don't care if you tell them Brian Herritt told me. I'll take emails from any chief in the county. And tell them, I want you to put my address and my loved one in your system. If you work at a school, and your school's in Pasadena, I want you to get a hold of your school resource officer. Both agencies have them. And say, do you know my son? I want you to meet my son or my daughter. Then I want you to go to the fire department. Now the fire department's a little bit different because they're probably going to be eating dinner and watching TV when you get there. Sorry, Chief. Sorry. See? Chief just said I never lie. But no, I'll be honest with you. You go to the fire department, to be totally honest with you, my experience, they're going to be over welcoming with you. They'll take your loved one and put them on a truck. They will. But you need to find your fire department that's in your community. Now, you may get one from another station, I get that. But the main one that's closest to your home, go to and say, I want you to know this is the case. If it's your loved one's in a wheelchair, let them know that. Have them put that in their system. Because if there's a residential fire in your house and they know that, firefighters, they're going to go do what they got to do. But you have to give them the information. We can't expect them to do their job without helping them and without giving them the information that they need. You follow me? So you have homework. You're going to have a lot of it tonight. But the first two things you need to do, or three, is find your local police department. If your kids go to public school, find the school resource officer, and then find the fire department. Those are the three things you need to do. What do you give them when you get there? I'll make it real easy for you. Give them one of these. You're going to keep a copy of it, and I'll get to the point in my slide where I talk about the form I have, but this is being given to you tonight. Make a Xerox copy of it and hand it to them. Make a Xerox copy and hand it to the police department. They want that information. Schools want that information. But you need to meet them halfway. Next slide, please. So, how can you help during an autism emergency with law enforcement? Again, like Chief said, I have a saying that says that if you're reacting, it's too late to prepare. You're just reacting. And when you react, scientifically, there are studies that show your thinking is not the same as when you're calm. Preparing, you're calm. So, Chief was right, and I'm going to second that notion, that the day the police department arrives at your door, it's too late to say, oh, well, I should have. The day you get called to the school and the school resource officer you never met has your kid handcuffed, it's too late to say, well, I should have. The day the fire truck is outside and they're coming, it's too late to say, well, I should have. You have to prepare. I always tell parents, if you owned a $300,000 car, would you lock it? Yeah. Would you put a cover on it? Probably. Would you get GPS for it? Oh, yeah. You'd spend all that money on a car. What's your loved one worth? What's your loved one worth? What's the kids that you teach worth? Are they worth more than that car? My son is. So you do everything you can to keep them safe. Enroll in programs if they have them. Okay, Domino was talking when she was up here about the Take Me Home program, something we did in San Diego, and I know Domino, and we talked earlier today, they're looking at those sort of things. And they are. They're always willing to listen. They're always willing to hear what you have to say. But find out what programs are out there and enroll them in them. Provide them with an address, name, and a photo. Advise of sensory issues if they have them, and use information. Use the information sheets. Again, I have my own, and I'll show you the one I use in a second, but here's this one, which is just as good. Next slide, please. Through my website, if you go on that website and you go to forms and articles, you go down to the Take Me Home Registry Caregiver Use. Next slide, please. And this form comes up, and mine's a little bit longer than that. But mine is a 3-page form that gets all into details. When we created the Take Me Home program, I had the unique option with Sheriff Gore down in San Diego County to sit down and say, Brian, if you could come up with a dream system, what would be in it? And I'll be honest with you, everything I wanted to put in it was put in it. And it's a great system, and I'm confident the state of California is actually looking at doing something now through Riverside County and through the Cal ID board. They're looking at making a statewide system. Now again, why that information is critical is when South Pasadena or the fire department arrives at your home, they already have the information. You prepared. You're not just reacting. They can react reasonably. Next slide, please. Places to put these sheets. Okay? The refrigerator is one. Okay? I like this. I think this is a great idea. I'll be honest with you. I'd never heard of this until today. And I'm going to do my best to push it. Because I think you found a great idea, Chief. I'll be honest with you. And he's not paying me, so I'm not kissing his butt. I think it's a great idea. But where do you put these forms? Well, you're going to put it in your refrigerator. You're going to put it in your glove box of your car. Why? What if you get in a car crash and you're knocked out, and your son or daughter, or the people you're caring for, are in the back of the car, and you can't care for them, and police show up to the accident? Would you want them to know that certain people in your car don't like to be touched? I would. Now, the glove box for cops is like the Bermuda Triangle. We love the glove box. I don't know why. I don't know, Chief, if it goes back in your time or not. You got a lot of, all those hash marks on his arm where he can't turn represent a lot of years of being a cop. But the glove box is the golden spot. So put them in your glove box. Your neighbors. I'm not talking about your creepy neighbors that wear shorts when it's really cold outside. I'm talking about trusted neighbors that you have. Go to them if you trust them and say, here's some information. Hey, this bottle has information on little Brian. My neighbors know my son. Can you just hold on to it, and if a police officer or fire truck ever comes, can you run this out to him? Your neighbors, okay? In your safe with your important papers, and lastly with school. Brian is homeschooled now. I was astonished every year in public school where we would send Brian to school the first day of school, and the teachers never wanted to meet with us beforehand. And I would call and say, no, I need to meet with you beforehand. Oh, Mr. Herritt, we'll meet with you after the first week of school. No, you won't. You're going to meet with me before day one, and I'm going to tell you what about my son you need to know, because I'm entrusting him with your care. So you're going to send that paperwork to school. Next slide, please. During the incident, it's too late. Start to prepare. Okay? So now you got another item of homework. Fill these out, put them in the appropriate places. It's going to take you 15 minutes at most. Next slide, please. How can you help during an incident? Try to remain calm. And you say, Brian, how is that possible? How can that happen? You're not going to help if you're not being calm. And I'm being honest with you. Okay? If your son or daughter or loved one with special needs is missing and you can't talk because you're so upset, we're wasting time. If your son or daughter is having a meltdown and are being violent in the next room and they want to go in and they can't allow somebody to hurt themselves, but you can't talk because you're so upset, you're not helping the issue. Maybe what you do is you have your sheet ready, and if you have to call the police out, you hand them the sheet when they get there. Don't attack the first person who responds in the door. Patience. You need to have it and display it. Have an emergency packet ready, or your form. Disclosure. He has autism. If you have somebody with special needs who's verbal, teach them to say that to every police officer and firefighter they meet. If you interact with a cop and the first thing they say is, I have autism, that's a pretty big clue of what they're dealing with. If not, you say it. Tell them. Teach your neighbors so they can say it. Keep control of the person if you can. Okay, next slide. What types of crimes are more frequently connected with autism-related cases? And this can go across the board to any kind of developmental disability. Harassment. Reactionary violence is probably the most common crime that we have. Okay? That case in Florida, and I don't know a lot about it, I haven't talked to the department, I don't like Monday morning quarterbacking cops because I'm not there, I don't know all of the details. What I do know that's factual is this kid was assaulted, or was assaultive to staff 3 previous times as a reaction for not getting what he wanted. Why they called the police, I don't know any of that stuff. Does it bother me? Yes, it bothers me. But it's reactionary violence. My son is not violent. But if you hit him with a negative trigger, or if he's going to go to speech and doesn't want to, he's going to throw haymakers. My wife is 5'5". My son is 5'7". My wife would want me to tell you she weighs 4 pounds. She doesn't, but Brian outweighs her by about 100 pounds. Brian has broken her nose, and Brian has given her 2 black eyes. Brian hit me for the very first time 2 weeks ago, right across the jaw. I didn't know what to do. I froze. And my wife just laughed at me and said, how's it feel? but it's reactionary violence. But here's the problem we run into law enforcement with the reactionary violence. If a police officer walks into my house and my wife's bloodied and got a bloody nose, can they leave my wife and my son in the care of my wife knowing that that just happened? The California Penal Code says no. And a lot of you don't know that. So what can they do? A lot of you know the term 5150, and I'm sorry that you know it. Some of you know it from personal experience. 5150 is a state code that was created to take a person who's in crisis, give them medication, and then re-release them into society. What medication are you going to give my son to make his autism go away? Because the last time I checked, there wasn't one. So that's not the appropriate placement. But what are they supposed to do? Seriously. And there are less resources, and the state is closing their developmental centers because they want them to be privatized. But we, as a community, and I'll be honest with you, I'm going to go back down south, you guys, after I leave, still are dealing with the chiefs, Domino and all the chiefs, and you guys are still here. What are you guys going to do to answer the call the chief just said to you? That's not the right answer. But what is? We need to start thinking about that. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Theft. Sexual offenses are huge, and they're private issues, and I get that. My son is mentally probably 2 to 4 years old. Body-wise, he's 14, getting ready to be 15 years old. He has pubic hair. He has male parts, gets excited, and those issues are tough to handle, and they are, but they have to be dealt with. Okay? He likes to grab sensitive areas of his body. What are sensitive areas of his body? What do you think the public does that doesn't know my son has autism when they see him running down the street naked? Who do they call? The police. The police get there, all they know is they have a naked 15-year-old kid down the street. When I first started in law enforcement 15 years ago, if you were naked and sweating, you were on PCP. That was just the ongoing thing. And for you guys that don't know, for cops, getting in a fight with PCP is like fighting a man 10 times his strength. Mindset. They don't know what they're dealing with. You got to do your homework. Now, if they know that on that street there's a kid with autism who likes to take off his clothes and run, maybe that goes through their mind before they have to put their hands on my son. But you have to do your part. Theft, sexual offenses, and child endangerment. This is more for the parents than for the kids. I'll be honest with you. I've had a CPS referral done on me by the school nurse, although she'll never tell me it was her. It's every parent's worst fear, and I get that. But you need to do what you need to do to show your case and your just cause. Cops do not like taking kids out of families' homes. Even if you're the worst parent in the world and they know that, it's the kid that sticks with us. It's that kid crying while we strap them in a car seat and take them off. It bothers us. We don't want to take away your kids. It's not what we want to do. But if you go through everything we're talking about today and keep detailed records, you prove that. But state law says when a complaint comes in, it has to be investigated. True story. My son goes to school, he's got a bruise on his arm, was with a therapist, jumped off the trampoline and got a huge bruise on his arm. Okay? I have the therapist that's working at home with him write me a statement saying she saw him get bruised. I take him to the doctors, knowing he has a high pain tolerance. I get x-rays, nothing's broken. The next day I call school. Brian's not coming to school today and tomorrow. He'll be back on Monday. He has a huge bruise on his arm, but he'll be back on Monday. On Monday, I walk into the school with Brian. Go to the school nurse, I go to the principal. I say, here's the paperwork about what happened to my son. 3 hours later, my 16-year-old son at the time, Vinny, calls me on the phone and says, Dad, a social worker just showed up at school and asked me how Brian got the bruise on his arm. Social worker knocks on my door. I actually called the chief of social workers in Riverside County because I did training for him. Call him on the phone. Send him on over. I'm ready for him. I'll make him a sandwich. Knock on my door, social worker opens the door. Hey, Mr. Herritt, I took your class about 6 months ago. Great. I just need to talk to you real quick and we'll be done with this. Fine. But I had the documentation. And I know people. but I had the documentation. Next slide, please. Sexual intimacy. My wife loves this chart, and this is real quick for parents or teachers if you're dealing with these issues. You can find the circles of intimacy and relationships from Markland Chapin. And what you do in this situation is, and what we do is we have the circles up at home, and we put faces of people for Brian and you. He's allowed to be you being himself and be completely naked and touch himself. But he's the only person in that circle. Intimate, hugging, kissing, can be me and mom. Friends, you always have clothes on, you high five. And we put those people in those circles. Okay, next slide. That's just something I always throw in there. What to do if they're arrested? Does this happen? Yeah, it does. Okay, what do? Call an attorney. I'm a cop, retired cop. I'm gonna tell you, first thing you do is call an attorney. Next thing you do is notify the arresting officer that the person has autism or whatever developmental or whatever type of issue they have. Tell them and get their name. Tell them. Tell them that they have medications that they need and ask them where you can drop them off. And take very detailed notes. Okay? Next slide, please. Anti-wandering and elopement. Next slide. Wandering and elopement are probably the bigger issues that we face specifically with autism. But in the United States in the last 5 years, there have been over 200 predominantly kids, but that have died from wandering away from home. Drowning is the leading cause of death for people with developmental disabilities, both Down syndrome and autism. Okay, drowning is. They're attracted to the visual stimulant of water. They go get in water, but they can't swim, but they don't understand that's the case. Okay, that again comes into your pre-planning and what are you putting on the form and are you meeting with your local cops. If you know you have a runner, that's what you need to tell Domino tonight if you're from Pasadena, if you live in the city of Pasadena. If not, tomorrow, when you go to South Pasadena, you say, look, he's 15, he's a runner. He's going to run. The cops can ask you, okay, well, where does he run to? Do they generally run in the same spots? Yeah. But we need to give them that information. Okay? At home, what can you do? Your neighbors. Notify your neighbors. Again, not the creepy neighbors. My neighbors at the end of my cul-de-sac know on both sides, plus up on the end of the street, those neighbors know. And I'll be honest with you, I've met other neighbors and I tell them, hey, and this is what I tell them. If you ever see Brian outside of our house without me, my wife, or his older brother, please call the police immediately and follow him. And if you think he's going to get hit by a car or do something to hurt himself, please, by all means, jump on top of him and pin him down. And I have that frank of a conversation with him. I say, here's my phone number. Please call me if you ever see him outside, but please call the police because something is wrong if he's outside. Something is wrong. Secure your windows and your doors. Get locks. Get little alarms. We have little alarms that when Brian goes out the doors, they will trigger a little bell. Get a home alarm system. Video and CCTV. You can now have video and CCTV on your phone that you can look in every room in your house. Why would you not do that? Keep records of what you did and proof in the event that it's needed. I go back to child abuse investigations. Your kid wanders out home. If a 4-year-old is outside at 2 in the morning and a cop finds your 2-year-old child and brings them to you, they have to ask you questions like, how do we stop this from happening again? You say, well, he has autism. They say, look, I get that, but I can't let your kid walk outside at 2 in the morning. So what steps can we take to keep your kid safe? And this is where you keep all of those receipts and everything that you've done to show the police, to show social services, this is everything I've done. I'm doing everything I can. Next slide, please. When calling the police, describe to them why you're scared. If your son or daughter's having a meltdown, he's punching the walls and he's going to hurt himself or hurt me. They need to know that. They also need to know, is he verbal or nonverbal? They also need to know what calms him down or what type of de-escalation works for you. What's become a very common call in the last 3 years for me to deal with is when single mom is at home with very large autistic son and she's locked in the bathroom and he's beating down the door. I'm being honest with you. But when you call dispatch, you have to give them the information that they need. Again, preparation. If you call and you say, and it registers your house, and you're just screaming on the phone, and you say, my son, and they can pull up the record and say, are you referring to your son with autism, ma'am? I can hear you screaming. Yes. Okay, I see in here that he's violent, or he's been violent in the past. I also see in here that he likes Skittles, loves bubbles, and he doesn't like loud sounds. Is that correct? Yeah. Do you think the cops and the firefighters want to know that when they respond to your house? Absolutely. Firefighters, here's the secret. They get to put their lights and sirens on when they go to the bathroom. Cops, we have to ask for permission. There's all this liability. Firefighters get to keep their lights and sirens on everywhere they go. It's an attention thing, I think, Chief. Hey, I told Stella it was coming. You just chose to sit up in front. But describe why you're scared. If they've run away, and this is a very common call, tell them where you think they would go. Most of you know, and by the end of today you should know, because I'll tell you why, where your loved ones will go if they're not at home. Think about it. Where would they go? And I'll put you through an exercise later to tell you. Get involved. Start on your own if they're missing. Again, call those neighbors. Break down your family. Get your teenage sons and daughters and have them start hitting those spots. Next slide, please. I have a severe love for window tint. Okay? I don't know if you all share that same love for me. But my son loves to be naked. So I have a problem when my son wants to jump up and down on his bed and be naked. That's a problem if the neighbors are walking by or little girls are riding their bike by my house. So you can go to Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever you fancy, and for $40 cover up the majority of the windows in the front of your house. Self-adhesive window tint. One of the smartest investments you can make. Again, I understand that what we keep in our house, we understand. What's okay for us may not be okay for everybody else. I get that. But you need to do your part to make sure the outside can't get into the inside. Okay? Next slide, please. In your home. Next slide. Project Lifesaver or any of those type of trackers are great trackers. The other great tracker you can have if you're into tracker is you go to any Fry's, you can go to any Radio Shack if they're still open out here, and buy a 99-cent little GPS tracker that has a app for your iPhone or for your Android. And you put that in their jacket, their backpack, their shoes, anything that you guys know, they have the stuff that they wear every day and they take every day. And then if you need it, you can turn it on and know where they're at. Stickers on your house and your car. Again, this comes with a magnet we heard today. Now I will caution you on this. I have an autism awareness sticker on my car. Okay? If you have stickers on your house and on your car, you're telling everybody that you have a special needs person living in your home. I'm not saying don't do it. What I'm saying is if you notice people that are paying attention to that, more than the average bear, you probably want to call the police about that. Okay? Our kids, I'll be honest with you, our loved ones are easily victimized. And they're the perfect victim for a lot of different criminals. Okay? So just know that that's the case. Temporary tattoos, I love temporary tattoos. You can order them online. We put one on Brian's back when he's asleep the night before we go to Disneyland or anywhere big where there's a large crowd. Why? If he gets separated for us, what is he going to do? Take off all of his clothes. If he sees the tattoo, he's going to take it off because it doesn't belong there. But if it's on his back, he doesn't know it's there. Okay? Laces of shoes you can put on something like medical alert type stuff or autism. Inside clothing, write their name inside their jacket and put has autism, nonverbal. I have that in Brian's jackets. Okay? It's not just for the cops or the firefighters, but anybody that may be trying to help him so they know. Medical alert jewelry, video cameras, and I have an undying love for locks. Next slide, please. Chemical storage. Again, if you're waiting till the disaster happens to say, ooh, I should have done that, kids are curious. Lock up your chemicals. Lock up your guns. Okay? I had a cop come to me in Salt Lake City and say, Brian, I have a problem. My 17-year-old son has moderate autism, and he's fascinated with guns. He knows every gun maker. He wants to shoot constantly. I've caught him twice playing with my guns. And I looked at this cop and I said, and he says, what do you think I should do? I said, find a new line of work and get rid of all your guns. Because if he wants to find that gun, guess what? He's going to find it. Okay? Let me tell you right now, people with special needs, when they want to do something, they're going to do it. Okay? I know. So is my wife. Exterior fencing at your home. Again, go to your backyard. Look at your exterior fencing and see if there's any spots where people can see in. Brian goes in our backyard, he's supposed to wear shorts. Every now and then, I see him through the back window on his trampoline, and I see little white butt cheeks jumping up and down. And I gotta run out there. But here's the problem. Other people, if they can see in my backyard, what are they seeing? Okay? Alarms, pets, and notifying neighbors. Next slide, please. Your community. Next slide. Contact first responders, we went through that. Sign stickers, went through that. Notify neighbors, went through that. Canvass your neighborhood. When I talk about canvass your neighborhood, if you know what your son, daughter, loved one with autism likes, or what they're going to be drawn to, drive through, walk through, whatever, your neighborhood without them one day, and look and see what you think they would be drawn to. Because if you can't find them, they're going to go to what they're drawn to. And like I said, we'll go through an exercise in a minute. Think about routine pass. Know the predators in your area. Okay? Again, what are you going to do to keep your kids safe? What if you own an expensive car? There's no reason you can't look on Megan's Law and find out who's in your communities. Are there sex offenders in Pasadena and South Pasadena? I'm sorry, there are. They're in every community. Okay? They are. But when you know the face, and that face is who you see walking down your street, that's a phone call. Again, these guys will do anything to protect our loved ones. Our loved ones with special needs, I'll be honest with you, get an extra little special spot in their heart. You call them and say, look, I seen this guy in Megan's Law, he's a sex registrant, and he was in my front yard yesterday. And I have a 16-year-old daughter with Down syndrome. Do you think that's something Domino would want to do something about, or the Chiefs? Oh, you betcha. Okay? Next slide, please. Walk in the community with your loved one. Walk in the eyes of your loved one. And here's the exercise I'm talking about. And I didn't do this with Brian, and I'll tell you the story. I went to a conference and I heard this as a method of something to do, and I was like, no, it'll never work for me. And I came home and I was talking to my wife about the conference, and I said, yeah, they said we should let Brian take us for a walk or whatever, but there's nothing around here that Brian's going to find that's scary. And what it is you go to your front yard with your loved one, and you let them take you for a walk. Now, with Brian, we took Brian out front, and I told my wife, this is never going to work, this is useless. And we stood in my front yard. And Brian looked back at us, and then we said, Brian, go. And Brian looked back at us again like, are you kidding me? I'm not allowed to leave without you. And we said, no, Brian, go. And Brian started to walk, and we walked behind him. And then I started to get a little concerned because he started picking up the pace. Went down the street, to the left, to the right, to the left, walked through a front yard, looked through the gate, and there was a pool in the backyard with a waterfall. We had never been in that house. I had never knew that that person had that. I don't know when we drove by and Brian saw it, but the minute he had time to go for himself, he was going to try to go get in that pool and play in that water. And at the time, he couldn't swim. So do that, because it worked for me. Take your loved one or loved ones on a walk and let them control where they go. Because if you can't find them, where do you think they're going to go? I know where Brian would go right now. One of the spots I would go check. Next slide, please. Schools. Okay, I'm not anti-school, but I do want you guys to be educated. Next slide. Things to know. Does the school have a de-escalation plan? Every school should have a de-escalation plan. You should be able to see that de-escalation plan. Now, what do you do with it when you get it? A couple things. One is you read it and you bring it to your IEPs with you. Two, you go to the school resource officer and say, have you seen this? If they say no, say, this is what they're saying they're going to do to de-escalate my son when he's violent. Because in the school, when things get really bad, who do the teachers call? The school resource officer. Now, there's a difference between school resource officers and teachers. Generally, teachers take being bit, spit, kicked on, have poop flung on them. They deal with that. And so do the aides. Do cops. It's a different set of rules. Not only that, when cops enter the room, what do they have to gain? Control. What do they have? A ton of tools around their waist. Does the school have a restraint policy? You have the right to ask that question and you should know the answer. Does that plan affect bus drivers? I'm still always weary of bus drivers, I don't know why. Are the restrooms integrated? Are there restrooms they can go to where it's just them by themselves? Is the playground integrated? When do the police get involved in incidents? Now, I'll go back to, again, I don't know all the details of this latest incident in Florida. What I do know is if you ask your school, when do the police get involved? If they say, look, if they're extremely violent, we will automatically call the police. Fine. Then you know. Then your next bet is to go to who those police officers are, school resource officers, and say, hey, if my son's extremely violent, this is what I want you to do. This is what we do to calm him down, because I know him better than anybody. But when do the police get involved? Are the police in the classrooms? Do they go in the classrooms? My thing is, I think school resource officers should know every special ed kid in the schools they police. Because they're the most likely to be in crisis, they're the most likely for use of force incidents. Next slide, please. In the cafeteria, tell the school and cafeteria diet concerns. A lot of our loved ones with special needs have diet issues. Make sure they know their diet restrictions. And not only that, but what I want you to do is walk into the cafeteria with what those diet restrictions are and say, hey, my son is Josh, he's in Mrs. Jones's class, he's allergic to peanuts. Brian's allergic to cheese. 4 years in a row, I walked into the cafeteria the third day of school, they had no idea he was allergic to cheese. Okay? Not against schools. I'm just telling you to keep your kids safe. Brian eats cheese, they don't know he's allergic to it. How does that make Brian feel? He gets violent. Starts that spiral. Next slide, please. We're wrapping up. I know I got time here. Police involvement, what is the policy? What steps are taken prior to the police being involved? And when is it okay to move right to police involvement? You have the right to know those questions. You should be asking those questions in your IEPs. On top of that, if there is an SRO at the schools and you go to a Pasadena public school or South Pasadena public school, you should invite the SRO to come to your IEP. Seriously, invite them to come. They don't need to say anything. You have the right to make a safety goal in an IEP. And maybe your safety goal is, I want the police officer to come by once a month and spend 5 minutes with my son. I've done that in an IEP. Does it help? Did for Brian. Because when Brian got upset, the person in Brian's school that can calm him down better than the aides was the SRO. Part of it was he was used to daddy being in a uniform. But that's true. Next slide, please. Injury reports. You should know if your son or daughter's in school, at daycare, if they're in a board daycare facility, when you go pick them up, you should know every single time they get injured. You should also know every single time they have to change clothes. Okay? I completely lost it on more than one occasion when Brian would come home with different underwear on. Because I can't ask Brian what happened to his underwear. He can't tell me. That's something I put on the school to tell me. Okay? Emergency kits at school. If your schools don't do it, you do it. If what soothes your kid and de-escalates your kid is Skittles, give them a caseload of Skittles to keep in the closet in case your son gets upset. Whatever it is they stem on, whatever it is they're fascinated with, you send them to school with a kit. So in an earthquake or a major incident where they're locked down, they have what they need because they do have special needs. Next slide, please. Areas of concern at the school are the restrooms, the playgrounds, the cafeteria, transportation, and how do they respond to sexual issues? You have the right to ask those questions. Next slide, please. I'm almost done, I promise. Meet and talk to your school resource officers. I've already covered that. If you are from Pasadena or South Pasadena, you have an SRO. It is your job to find that SRO and talk to them. That's your job. Because if a situation happens and you haven't, then you didn't do your part. If a situation comes across either one of these two chiefs and they say at the school the SRO got involved, and they go to the SRO and say, did you know the kid? And they go, no, that's two people's fault. But that's mainly your fault, because I'm telling you today to do your part and find out who they are and communicate with them. Next slide, please. This is the last one. So, disaster plan. At home and at school, you should have a disaster plan involving your loved ones with special needs. Explain the roles and responsibilities. Brian has a room with Vinny. Vinny knows in a fire or an earthquake, his sole job is to get his brother and get him out of that house. The hard part is convincing my wife that she doesn't need to run down there and we can trust Vinny to do that. And we can. And we've drilled it, and we have. Include neighbors in your disaster plan. Hey, is it cool with you if I tell my kids if something goes on that they run over to you? Again, what is it that keeps them calm? If it's bubbles and Skittles, tell your neighbor, hey, here's some bubbles and Skittles, put them in a drawer, put them in your garage, put them somewhere, but if you ever have to take care of Brian for a couple minutes, this will pacify him until I can get to him. But you have to prepare for it. Photos. In your emergency kit, photos. Current photos. Stickers. No speech autism. We have them in Vinny's nightstand. He knows that if something happens and he has to get Brian out of the house, he's plastering Brian with stickers that say, I can't talk. Okay? Food storage. Comfort items in the emergency form should all be in that kit. Now, last tip for you, and all of you can do this. These are great pieces of information. But right now, for those of you that have your loved one with you, what would we do right now if something happened and you got separated from your loved one? Everybody here can go to Walmart and for $7 buy a flash drive. On that flash drive, you keep a current picture, you keep the disaster form, you keep their diagnosis, you keep their medication, and you put it on your car keys. Because your car keys go everywhere with you. So if you're in South Pasadena today, and tomorrow you go to Disneyland and you're in Anaheim, and you're going to contact Anaheim police and they want to see a picture of your kid, you have that flash drive with all of that information on it. Flash drives, they're $9, $5. Okay? So, I know I went quick. I know I'm loud. I'm sorry. I was born that way. I hope you guys got something out of today. And I'm being honest with you, I do. The people from Pasadena leadership, the chiefs, all these people to put all this together, put it together. And I told them, hey, if one person shows up and you help one person, you've done your job. Okay? It's also getting recorded for local cable TV, and it's going to go out to cable TV for the people that weren't able to be here today so they can watch it and hopefully get something out of it. But if one person gets help because of what we talked about today, then they did their job. So when I am done and I leave, if you want to come up to me and tell me thank you, I appreciate it. I'll talk to you. We'll talk in the lobby for as long as you guys want. I mean that. But who I really want you to thank is the people that are from Leadership Pasadena, these gentlemen here, because they got other stuff to do. They're running cities. Domino, she's got a daughter, she's got stuff to do, and they're here. Now, lastly, when you do break off of here, if you live in the city of Pasadena, you don't have to walk into the station tomorrow. You just need to walk across the room to Domino. Talk to Domino. Meet Domino. She has cards. She'll give you cards. Here's the thing about Domino, and I'm going to embarrass her a little bit. When I taught my class, San Gabriel Chiefs of Police brought me out here about 4 years ago, and I'm teaching my class. And while I'm teaching, I see this lady in the back just writing down note after note. And I'm thinking, I know I'm a great presenter, but wow, that's ridiculous. And it was her. And since then, I've talked to her several different times since then. And I will tell you, if my son was in a period of a violent meltdown and I wasn't there, I would hope she was the cop that went there. And I don't say that to very many cops. But reach out to her and talk to her, and let's get that information that we talked about into the police department. Let's bridge that gap. Okay? You ready for me? All right.
Stay right here.
All right.
Okay, one more round. First of all, on behalf of Leadership Pasadena and our community partners, thank you so much for coming tonight and taking time out of your day and your evening. Two things. One is, we are so fortunate to have Brian as a resource now, known now to our Pasadena community. So again, he used the word neighbors. Please share this information with your communities, with your neighbors, with your friends, with your schools. Let's broaden the reach and keep this dialogue going. This is hopefully the first of many. Second, Brian, if you'd like to answer some questions that could help maybe generally everyone, we could take a few questions. We have some cookies and some water. We have the little bags that have the forms and the vials. You're welcome to take some extras if you want to take them back to others. And we also have a survey, so we'd love to get your feedback on how we did tonight and if you'd like to get more information. But Brian, would you take a few questions?
Questions? Anybody? And if you want to make them private, you want to talk to me about private issues, I will be back there, and we're more than welcome to. Yes, sir?
This is great information, incredible information for all of us, and things that we need to be doing. But still, the question that many of us have, and the greatest fear that we have, is that confrontation with a police officer.
Right.
Where they're,
I got you.
The first thing they do is shoot, and then
Right.
they ask questions.
Right, and I will tell you, and I'll answer that. Part of that, I think, is social media and the way media is today. I was a cop for 14 years, got in a lot of stuff. I never shot anybody. The overwhelming majority of cops don't shoot people. That's not the percentage that's there. And I don't know your percentages here, but I know the national percentages. It doesn't happen a lot. What can you do to help that, I think, is moving forward. And if you have a loved one with special needs and you want to do that, I tell you right now, if you email Chief and you said, hey, my son's on a special needs baseball team, can you send some officers out to play baseball with my kids? Chief, would you do that?
Absolutely.
Chief, would you do that? Sure. They'll do whatever you guys invite them to do. And how do we help that is by bridging that gap and building that relationship. Make them be around your kids. When you guys do whatever it is you do. I mean, we have kids with special needs, we care for people with special needs, but they do stuff. It's not like 50 years ago where you're institutionalized. We all do things. Invite the cops to do what you do. They would love to be part of it. My son plays softball. I've had sheriff's department deputies out there twice that played, they loved it. They loved it. And some of those kids who had never seen a cop before know a cop wants to play baseball with them. And it's amazing. But we got to do our part. Do they got to do their part? Yeah, they do. But so do we. And I think that's where you come back. And I'll be honest with you and tell you that I get the social media and the craze right now that cops shoot first. But I can tell you right now there's statistics that back up that that's not the case.